young. You make me feel like spring has sprung. And every time I see you grin, I'm such a happy individual. The moment that you speak, I wanna run and play hide and seek. I wanna go and bounce the moon, just like a big balloon.
Because you and I, we are just like a couple of tots running around the meadow, picking up all those forget-me-nots.
You make me feel so young.
You make me feel there are songs to be sung
Bells to be rung,
and a wonderful flame to be flown. And even when I am old and gray, I'm gonna feel the way I do. Because you make me feel so young. You make me feel so young. You make me feel like spring has sprung. But every time I see you grin, I'm such a happy individual. The moment that you speak, I wanna run and play hide and seek. I wanna go and bounce the moon, just like a big balloon.
Because
You and I, we are just like a couple of tots running around the meadow, picking up all those forget-me-nots. You make me feel so young.
I feel so young.
You make me feel there are songs to be sung, bells to be rung, and a wonderful flame to be flown. And even when I'm old and gray,
I'm gonna feel the way I do.
this here day, because you make me feel so young. You make me feel so. You
righty. The Friends of the Library are who put on this night. They are faithful to books because they know it is right. You can join our great group at the table by the door, learn more about us, and so much more. So glad you could come to this annual event. We hope it is worth each and every cent. Oh, wait, I believe there wasn't any thing to pay. We hope you'll just stop to listen and stay. Our readers are stars in their own special way. Just wait a few minutes and hear what they say. You'll learn about them through their bios and talks. You might even feel how their shoes walk their walk. Our MC is next, and I'm sure you'll agree. She has wit, has humor. She is Nancy Bugby.
First, let's thank Annie Wallach for putting this program together. Well done. The Night of 1,000 Stars is a celebration of reading, creativity, and our wonderful library. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Library. The Friends are a key part of what makes this place so special, because through our volunteers, we provide all sorts of services and equipment that would not be otherwise possible given the town's budget constraints. There are flyers on the table and back, and there's a little blurb on the back of your programs about the kind of things the Friends do, including buying that piano, which just entertained you. You will probably recognize our first reader, Chris Carney, because he's an adult services librarian. He's originally from Maine and now lives in Manchester. He has a Bachelor of Arts in History from UMass Amherst, but first studied Japanese language and literature with the intention of teaching and translating overseas. He got his master's degree in library and information science from SUNY Albany and has been working in the field since 2013. Chris is a newlywed and is a proud papa to a 3.5-year-old mixed breed puppy named Arlo. I have a 6-year-old adopted Bichon. He's got about 20 squeaky toys, but he usually brings me the same one. I don't know if it's his favorite or if he thinks it's my favorite. Anyway, here's Chris Carney.
Good evening, everybody. I usually get to introduce programs, so this is kind of a new experience being able to be a part of one. So I actually practiced reading in front of the puppy tonight, but he wasn't very good with criticism. I'm effectively a 12-year-old trapped in like a 33-year-old body, so anything that has to do with fantasy or knights, wizards, magic, anything like that, I'm an absolute sucker for. So my reading tonight is from The Hobbit. This brings back memories of friends in college, of late nights doing not homework and just watching movies and playing Dungeons and Dragons. And once a year we would get together and watch all of the Lord of the Rings movies back to back to back, like the extended edition, the like 14 or 15 hours, I think, worth of film. We'd take like a 20-minute intermission, but it's one of my favorite readings. I can absolutely watch Lord of the Rings or read anything Tolkien back to back to back and never get tired of it, so I hope you enjoy. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep in caverns old, we must away ere break of day to seek the pale enchanted gold. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells, in places deep where dark things sleep in hollow halls beneath the fells. For ancient king and elvish lord, there many a gleaming golden hoard. They shaped and wrought the light they caught to hide in gems on hilt of sword. On silver necklaces they strung, the flowering stars on crowns they hung. The dragon fire in twisted wire, they meshed the light of moon and sun. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep in caverns old, we must away ere break of day to claim our long-forgotten gold. Goblets they carved there for themselves, and harps of gold where no man delves. They lay there long, and many a song was sung unheard by men or elves. The pines were roaring in the height, the winds were moaning in the night. The fire was red, its flaming spread, the trees like torches blazed with light. The bells were ringing in the dale, and men they looked up with faces pale. The dragon's ire, more fierce than fire, laid low their towers in houses frail. The mountains smoked beneath the moon, the dwarves they heard the tramp of doom. They fled their hall to dying fall, beneath his feet, beneath the moon. For over the misty mountains grim, to dungeons deep and caverns dim, we must away ere break of day, to win our harps and gold from him. Thank you.
Believe it or not, this is our 22nd Night of 1,000 Stars. I know, it's hard to believe it's been that long. Time just slips by so fast, and it seems to go faster every year. But there are telltale signs along the way that time is marching on. For example, my brother made a comment that he had noticed I'm getting wrinkles on my face. I indignantly said, "These aren't wrinkles, they're laugh lines." And he said, "Nothing's that funny." And of course, the weight gain. Nothing in my size fits me anymore. I had to return a pair of pants to Kohl's the other day because they were too tight. The clerk said, "Was there anything wrong with them?" I said, "Yes, they hurt my feelings." I was going to get a personal trainer. She said, "No pain, no gain." I said, "No pain and no gain? You got a deal." Yesterday, I did burn 3,000 calories. But that's the last time I take a nap when I'm baking brownies. Our next reader, Nord Christensen, whose name I spelled wrong, I'm so sorry, is a lifelong resident of Simsbury. His great-grandparents emigrated from Germany to Flaming Farm, where Nord grew up. You know the backward eggs? That's Flaming Farm. He still lives there with his wife, Janine, and started working on the farm at age 12. He was also involved at that age in Sea Scouting. He and his brother Nevin ran the farm together until 1995, when Nord left to join Janine as owners and managers of Simsbury Square. He also sits on the board of the Main Street Partnership. Nord still enjoys working outdoors and working with his hands. He's passionate about long-distance motorcycle riding. And get this, in the past several years, he's ridden to the Outer Banks and back, Alaska and back, all of England and Scotland, through the Pyrenees in France and Spain, and the Trans-Labradorian Highway in Nova Scotia. This guy gets around. His brother tells me he's an avid reader, which is pretty remarkable. I can't imagine having trouble reading because I live on books. Nord is dyslexic. Nord.
And you all wonder why the egg sign's backwards. That's a true story. I'm going to break from tradition. I'm not actually going to read anything. I'm just going to explain a little bit about myself and my dyslexia and what actually got me finally reading. I had a little outline. I guess I'm going to toss that. But anyway, the backwards egg sign is a friend of my brother's, came up from New York, was going to put a piece of artwork on the end of the barn, locked himself in the shop, didn't tell us what he was going to do, came out with this thing a few days later. We said, "There's no way we can put that up. It's way too big for a sign." And he said, "We'll put it up backwards." And I spun it around, mirror backwards. And he went, "That's even better." A few years later, I was in town hall. I hope there's nobody here from the town offices, and I got asked about the signs and permits and all that, and I said, "I don't know where you went to school, but where I went to school, that doesn't spell anything." So, growing up, I lived outside. I was outside all the time, playing in the pond, playing in the brook, on the mountain, out in the woods. We used to ride motorcycles through our farm, Tuller's, Ethel Walker, Town Forest, EB's fire trails, which we usually got chased out of. Going to school, I never did very well. Didn't know I was dyslexic. Nobody diagnosed it in those days. Really poor student, never read anything I didn't absolutely have to read, and even those things I really didn't read. Fast forward, my late 20s, I figured out I was dyslexic and was at a friend's house one night. And I ended up talking to a woman who had walked the Appalachian Trail from end to end. And I thought, that sounds like a lot of fun. I think I need to do this. Well, didn't have time for it. My knees wouldn't let me. But she said to me at one point that evening, she gave me a book. It was A Walk in the Woods. And I went, yeah, okay, thanks. And a few months later, I picked it up and I read it cover to cover, nonstop, couldn't put it down. I had found something that inspired me to read. That, in turn, inspired me to read a lot of other books. I read books on building of the Alaskan Highway, which inspired that ride, books on the Outer Banks, which inspired that ride, magazine articles on Trans-Labradorian Highway, which is 800 miles of dirt road, 350 miles between fuel stops. Did that one last summer by myself. Janine did not want to go with me on that one that time. But she did go to Alaska and back, 14,000 miles, 10 weeks. Sat on the back all the way up and back. My friends had a pool going as to what airport she was going to fly home from. And she insists she should have entered because she would have won. She made it the whole way. That's really about it. I never thought I would be reading the number of books, the kinds of books I'm reading. I've read Lewis and Clark journals, the originals, which are really difficult to read the way they're written because they spell things the way I do. A Thin Thread Across the Ocean, which is about the transcontinental cable, transatlantic cable, laid down in the 1850s. Building of a great bridge, another one, building of the Brooklyn Bridge right at the tail end of the Civil War. Just to me, phenomenal stuff. Things I never thought I would ever read or enjoy. Great bridges like that. I was amazed I got through it. But anyway, that's it.
A freshman at UConn named Donald MacDonald from the Isle of Skye in Scotland had been there about a month, and his mother called him to see how he was doing. I love school, Mother, but dorm life is so noisy. The guy on the left side keeps banging his head against the wall and won't stop. The guy on the other side screams and screams well into the night. Oh, Donald, said Mom, however do you manage with these awful neighbors? He said, Mother, I just ignore them. I keep to myself and just keep practicing my bagpipes. Our next reader, Josue Salcedo, is from Dallas, Texas, originally. He moved here before his freshman year as part of the ABC Simsbury program. He's now a junior at Simsbury High, and you might have seen him as he's very involved in the theater department. He was a featured dancer in the musical Kiss Me, Kate. He's also a dancer at the Terpsichore Dance and Theater Company. And get this, he takes jazz, ballet, partnering, tap, Broadway, and lyrical. He's also involved in the art department and made a photorealistic drawing that you might have seen at the Storyteller's Cottage. Josue. He's all the way back there.
Thank you. That's great. Hello, all. The book I chose is The Diary of Frida Kahlo, an intimate self-portrait introduced and interpreted by Carlos Fuentes. I chose this book because I come from an early generation of Mexican immigrants who have taught me that being proud of your heritage and your culture is what keeps your legacy going. Frida Kahlo is a universal figure that teaches you that there is more than lies beneath the eye. I grew up with old-fashioned parents who didn't believe that art was a stable dream to believe in. In school, I never read or learned about any artists who looked like me, So when I learned about Frida, I was eager to be just like her. I am currently a junior at Simsbury High School at the ABC House, away from my home in Texas. And some days when I am missing my home, I express my emotions through my art, just like Frida did. I have an art piece here that is inspired by Frida Kahlo that I made not too long ago. And now I'm going to read some excerpts from the book. Born with the Revolution, Frida Kahlo both mirrors and transcends the central event of 20th century Mexico. She mirrors it in her images of suffering, destruction, bloodshed, mutilation, loss, but also in her images of humor. The alegría that so distinguished her painful life. The resilience, the creativity, the jokes that run through the diary illuminate the capacity of survival that distinguishes the paintings. Altogether, these expressions make her fantastically, unavoidably, dangerously symbolic. Or is it symptomatic of Mexico? Frida Kahlo is one of the greatest speakers for pain in a century that has known perhaps not more suffering than other times, but certainly a more unjustified and therefore shameful, cynical and publicized, programmed, irrational, and deliberate form of suffering than ever. Her reality is her own face, the temple of her broken body, the soul she has left. Like Rembrandt and like Van Gogh, Kahlo tells her biography through her self-portraits. The stages of passion, innocence, suffering, and finally, wisdom are all evident in the Mexican as in two great Dutch self-portraits. But the aura of strangeness, displacement of objects, and dislocation of sceneries, as well as her spontaneous irrationality, have sometimes associated her as well with surrealism. And those are it. That's it. Thank you.
Next up is the first of our two authors that we have with us this evening. Reminds me, a college creative writing class was asked by the professor to write a concise essay containing any of the following four key elements: religion, royalty, sex, or mystery. The best essay would win a bookstore gift certificate. The professor announced the winner, saying, "This was the only piece that concisely contained all four elements: religion, royalty, sex, and mystery." The winner? "My God," said the Queen, "I'm pregnant. I wonder who did it." Sean Elizabeth George grew up in Avon and currently lives there with her husband Stephen and their three children, Kate, Gavin, and Matthew. Sean's an inspirational author and speaker. She writes and speaks of her life struggles to let others know they are not alone in their struggles and to infuse hope into others' hearts. She's been an active member in our community, engaging in outreach activities through her children's school and church for many years. She is currently leading a mental health matters discussion in Avon to help raise awareness that mental health matters and to help provide resources to our Farmington Valley community on where to seek help when it's needed. She's the author of 3 books: My Journey to Live from the Inside Out, a children's book, A Place for Sam, and her most recent book, Our Struggles Have Purpose, 50-plus life lessons from my walk with cancer. Sean.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? I might get emotional because as I arrived here today, I realized today's a very significant day. 8 years ago, my grandmother passed away. And at the end of her life, she came to live in Avon with my parents. And she ended up living at River Ridge towards the end. But I didn't know my grandmother most of my life. I knew a shell of a person, and at the end of her life, she started just opening. It was like this shell cracked open, and I got to know this woman I didn't know most of my life. And in getting to really know my grandmother, I have 3 kids, and during nap time, I see you in the back, I see you, we've been there, I started writing. You see, I'm not a writer. I am an encourager, and I used to encourage people as a health and phys ed teacher. I used to be one in Canton. And then I started teaching yoga years ago, and actually that's how I met Annie. And I actually have another person I used to teach over at Big Sky for about 10 years. And when my grandmother was going through this, I started to need to process my feelings. Because what I saw with my grandmother is at the end of her life, she started living. And I didn't want that. And so I was learning how I had anxiety and depression. My grandmother was the first person in my family that I knew also had it, but she didn't discover it till she was 81. And now I do share of my struggles with anxiety and depression in my first book, My Journey to Live from the Inside Out. That's the one that my grandmother inspired me to write. My story I put into a kid's book called A Place for Sam. And then 2 years ago, in January 2017, I was diagnosed with a rare salivary gland cancer. And in the process, on March 15th, 2017, the tumor was actually in my palate and nasal cavity, so I had to have my palate removed. So I speak with you with an artificial palate that I can take in and out. It's called an obturator, and I have some false teeth back here. I speak with this. Without it, I hope you can laugh at this. I sound like Charlie Brown's teacher, which my kids get a kick out of. But it helps me also drink. And sometimes I'm like, that straw's not working. No, it's not the straw. I don't have suction with my obturator. But, it's great. We're come to a healthy place as a family with it. I have the 3 kids. They were 4, 9, and 10 when I was diagnosed. They're now 13, 11, and 6. And one day at the dinner table, my son, the middle one, we were having like some type of Asian food, and I said, he's like, what's that? I said, well, that is ginger. It cleanses your palate. And he's like, how would you know? So we're in a good place. So I come to you. I chose a chapter from my newest book, Our Struggles Have Purpose. This one, it being the Night of the Stars, is I've learned through my journey with my struggles is that often, and the title of this life lesson, it's life lesson 13, it says, the hard times refine the diamond. And so, it says, for my birthday last November, Stephen surprised me with a trip to Nashville. We'd always wanted to go there, and I was so excited to finally go. The trip was scheduled for January and included tickets to a Dierks Bentley concert. We are country music fans, and Dierks happened to be playing that weekend we were going. While we were at the concert that Saturday night in Nashville at the Bridgestone Arena, Dierks moved from the main stage and came to the back to the small stage right in front of us. I can't remember whether he played more than one song, but the one that stayed with me is titled Riser. The song breathed life into dark spaces in my mind. My mother was going through cancer, but through her walk with breast cancer, it was a song I listened to often. I had also shared it with my mom to remind her she was a riser, a fighter, a survivor. I taped the song that night at the concert with tears of gratitude rolling down my face that my mom is doing well. When the song ended, I texted my mom the song, so full of joy, grateful there are encouraging songs that support people in their time of need. That was Saturday, January 21st. We arrived home from Nashville Tuesday, January 24th. The doctor found my tumor Wednesday, January 25th. I replay that moment at the concert in my head and thank God for reminding me of such beautiful message of hope days before I was diagnosed. This song is now one of my go-to songs to encourage me as I walk this journey with cancer. I am a riser. I rise every morning to grow in deeper relationship with God. I rise every day hopeful to be the wife Stephen needs. I rise every day hopeful to be the wife Stephen needs to grow into his best self. I rise every day hopeful to be the mom to Kate, Gavin, and Matthew who encourages and supports them to grow into the people God made them to be. I rise every day hopeful to live out love to my friends within my community and to strangers I meet along the way. Yes, cancer is part of my journey, and it could weigh me down, as it does at times. But it is in those moments I need to choose to be a riser and rise above the waves and look at the horizon full of beauty and light at the day ahead of me. Yes, my cancer is real. It is invasive. Its path and my long-term future are unknown. But as the Dierks Bentley song goes, the hard times put the shine into the diamond. This is a hard time, but it is one that is not meant to break me, but to refine me. I see it as a purification process for my heart, mind, and soul. I am practicing letting go of the little things and focusing more on God and being the person He made me to be, a vessel of love. I am a riser. Cancer cannot keep down my desire to share messages of hope, encouragement, and love. I won't let it. You also may be dealing with something. Maybe it isn't cancer, but it is still significant in your life. I encourage you to join me to pause, breathe, pray. Let's choose to be a riser and let the hard times refine us, rubbing away all that is insignificant in our lives, giving us brilliant clarity as to who and what matter in life, God and people. And may the refining process also reveal that radiant diamond we were each made to be. Shine bright, friend. The world needs your light.
If you ever find me complaining about anything, please slap me. I love this story. An elderly retired Marine was eating at a truck stop when 3 Hells Angels walked in. The first one went up to the old man and pushed a cigarette in his pie and then sat at the counter. The second spit into the old man's milk and took a seat at the counter. The third man walked up to the old man, turned over his plate, then took a seat at the counter. Without a word of protest, the old Marine quietly left the diner. Shortly thereafter, one of the bikers said to the waitress, Marine, not much of a man, was he? The waitress replied, he's not much of a truck driver either. He just backed his 18-wheeler over 3 motorcycles. Karl Heinzelman is originally from New York City. He's a retired Marine veteran who served in Vietnam. He's worked as an application engineer for avionics, MFR manufacturer, I guess. He's lived in 15 different states. He's married without children and is currently writing a book about his experiences while in the Marines. Karl.
Good evening. In case anybody's wondering, about 83 men in my bedroom. That's how many guys were in the barracks and boot camp. Actually, it was only 63, but I liked 83 better. Little poetic license. I'm not going to read from my book. I'm just going to tell you one of the stories that kind of changed my life a little bit. While I was in Vietnam, we were 8 miles from North Vietnam. So the thing is that their guns could fire 15 miles. Somebody couldn't do arithmetic. So what would happen is they would bring airplanes up, and they would then pick up a spotter. They would fly them around, and then they would bring the spotter back to Dong Ha, where we lived, right? And they would fly the airplane south because they didn't want the airplanes blown up. They didn't leave them there overnight. Well, usually our means of transportation were C-130s. C-130s sucked. Because the thing is that Air Force cargo seats have this metal frame, and the bar hits you dead in the butt as you sit there on this airplane. But worse than that were Marine C-130s. They had no seats. You sat on the floor and you linked arms as you took off. As you took off, everybody slid to the back of the airplane. If you were smart, you didn't get in front, because the thing is that when you landed, everybody slid against the wall in the front. And I said, what am I, garbage? This is stupid. So I used to watch the L-19s. They're basically a Piper Cub where you sit front and back and the observer gets out. And I said, these guys are flying south with an empty seat. You can't get what you don't ask for. So I went over, I said, can I get a ride with you? He goes, oh, sure, get it back. Boom. I did it a couple of times. So I got a little airline. So I go over, and I have to go down to Da Nang, and I said, well, I'll see if I can catch a spotter plane. I go over, and the Army captain's fueling the airplane. I said, Captain, I said, you going down to Phu Bai? He goes, yeah. I said, can I get a ride with you? He goes, sure. He goes, did you ever fly these things before? I said, yeah. meaning I had flown in them. So I'm helping him fuel the airplane, and we're having a conversation, and I realize this man thinks I can fly it. Well, I don't want to screw this thing up because I think he's going to say no, and I'm going to get stuck in the C-130 with 100 other guys. I said, how hard can this be? This is up, that's down, that's left, that's right. I've watched Sky King. He does it. How hard can this be? The arrogance of youth. So he said, okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do here. I'll take it up at 1,000 feet, and I'll lean over to the right so you can see the instruments, like I know what the instruments do. He goes, you take it up to 1,500, and I'll give you hand signals. Okay. Now, there's no windows in this thing. He's got a helmet on, right? Okay, fine. So I get in the airplane. The stick isn't even on the floor. It's on a bracket on the wall. He goes, oh, yeah, you got to put that in because they don't want the observer to hit it when he's moving around calling in artillery and things like that, right? Okay. Screw this thing in, put the little pin in. The rudders are folded down. I thought they were brakes. I said, well, I'm going to fly. I'm not going to stop. I don't need these. So we take off. 1,000 feet, he leans over to the right. For some reason, I knew what the altimeter was. So I get up to 1,500. I'm a friggin' pilot. He goes, make a left. We're upside down. And he's hitting me in the hands. Let go, let go. He gets the airplane up, and he turns around. He gives me this look. I went. So I don't know why he did this, but he goes, all right. So he reaches back and he pulls the rudders up. He's yelling at me. This is a left turn. And he shows me a little rudder, little pedal, little aileron. This is a right turn, little rudder, little aileron. Keep the nose of the airplane on the horizon. That's straight and level. You see that road? Yeah, he goes, follow it. He never spoke to me again for 65 miles. Well, he knew we couldn't get shot down because I was never the same piece of sky twice. But he didn't care. He didn't have to fly, So finally, we were about, 5 miles out of Fubai. He goes, I got it, thank God, And the only picture I have of this man is the back of his head as we're approaching the runway. I wish I had gotten this man's name because I liked it so much, I got a pilot's license. And I wound up in the aerospace industry, And it didn't kill me. And that's basically what the book is about. Just the dumb things that happened while you're in Vietnam. Because the thing is that when things aren't happening, you got a bunch of young guys hanging around. What are we going to do? One other quick story is that it was right after Tet. We had been hit a lot. And we're a little spooky. We had nothing to do. So we decided to throw rocks at Smitty. We weren't going to hit him, but we were going to, dance him around a little bit. Well, Smitty went and hid in the head. So we said, well, we can throw bigger rocks. So we're throwing rocks at the head. The head's this little wooden shed with a corrugated steel roof. Man, we're throwing some pretty good-sized rocks, and Smitty's watching. And all of a sudden, trucks start coming up by the perimeter. Guys are getting off with their weapons and stuff like that. So, crap, what's happening? We went and got our weapons, and we're standing behind the berm, and we're waiting. Captain comes out. He goes, how many guys are hurt? He said, what are you talking? He goes, we heard the incoming. We're throwing rocks at the shit house. He goes, don't tell anybody. They moved like 100 guys out to the perimeter. Meanwhile, Smitty's still in the head. That's 83 men in my bedroom. Thank you.
I've been thinking about the English language and different expressions, and I caught one last Sunday, Charlie Brown, saying, good grief. And it got me thinking, good grief? Grief good? My dad's birthday's coming up, which is both a happy and sad occasion since he passed away last month. Good grief applies perfectly, capturing the push and pull of my emotions, where I'm mentally celebrating his life and mourning his passing. We don't stop loving someone just because they're not around anymore. My dad was smart, honest, reliable, a true gentleman in the best sense of the word. I thought his passing would leave a massive void in my life, but that hasn't happened because he's with me all the time, even though he isn't. People joke that daughters become their mothers, but I think that all of us try to embody the best of both parents. If we try to live our lives the best way possible, we're keeping what we loved about them and deleting the rest. It's like an editor going over the first draft of a manuscript. The edited story morphs and changes, but the first draft, what our mothers and fathers instilled in us, remain in the story. So I like to think we are each, all of us, a book. We're constantly rewriting ourselves, and we never know where our own narratives will lead, or which plot twist will come out which way. But we're not in the final draft, not while we're still breathing, or while someone remembers us. So happy birthday, Dad. Good grief. Okay. Sarah Leathers is our next reader. She's a graduate of Union College with a BS in mechanical engineering. She also graduated as a certified health and wellness coach from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Her passion for helping others while utilizing her engineering and wellness education led her to found the Healing Meals Community Project in 2015. This is a great organization that provides 100% organic meals for families facing various health crises. She's worked extensively with young people along the way, empowering their youth volunteers with leadership skills. Sarah discovered the healing power of food through her own health crisis and has passionately championed bringing the idea of food is medicine approach to Connecticut. She's devoted countless hours to helping others. I met her actually through the Relay for Life for the Cancer Society, and is an inspirational leader. Sarah.
Hi, everybody. I see so many familiar faces. It warms my heart. Sarah Hart, a special thank you to Sarah, who invited me tonight. She's actually one of our amazing adult volunteers at Healing Meals. So as the founder of Healing Meals, I dreamed of starting this organization many years ago. My sister actually started this in California 12 years ago, and I watched what she developed, and I knew someday that I would start this here. It was about bringing a group of people together to support our community with nourishing meals made with love. But what I could have never imagined really was equally important to the work that we do about the meals is what we have developed for our youth. Oh, sorry, Sarah. She's telling me I have to speak up, so I will put this closer. Is that better? Okay. All right. It's a little awkward, but I can do it. It's our youth program. It's the opportunity for not only our youth, but really our adults and our team to come together and be in a place where they can be the very best of who they should be in the world. I have the pleasure of watching our youth volunteers come into the kitchen for the first time. And many times, they're all nervous. Our adults are nervous when you go someplace for the first time. But oftentimes with our youth, they're withdrawn, they're very reserved, and sometimes maybe even overzealous. But over time, we have given them a place to be who they're supposed to be in the world. They can't make a mistake. They can't ask a bad question. And there's this camaraderie among our adults and our youth that happens that is just magic. It's the only way I can describe it. So several months ago, I came across this quote, and I'm going to read it to you. And we always say we have a youth development program. But after I read this quote, I thought, you know what we are? We are a discovery program, the discovery of who we are supposed to be in the world. And so I'll read you the quote, and then I'm going to read you the book. So when Sarah asked me to do this quote just kept coming to me. So I actually went and found the book. And the book is written by Leo Buscaglia, which is an old author. I remember him in high school reading his books, and things really resonated with me. And this quote really resonates with me as well. Loving yourself involves the discovery of the true wonder of you, not only the present you, but the many possibilities of you. It involves the continual realization that you are unique, like no other person in the world, that life is or should be the discovery, the development, and the sharing of this uniqueness. So the book I'm reading is Love, What Life is All About. And I'm just reading, there's a couple different sections that I'm reading that kind of all tie in together that just really connected with me about the work that we do with our youth. Each man is unique. Nature abhors sameness. Each flower in the field is different, each blade of grass. Have you ever seen two roses alike, even among the same variety? No two faces are alike, even in identical twins. Our fingerprints are so singularly ours that we can be positively identified by them. But man is a strange creature. Diversity frightens him. Instead of accepting the challenge, the joy, the wonder of variation, he's usually frightened of it. He either moves away from or endeavors to twist uniqueness into sameness. Only then does he feel secure. Each child born is an unmarked creation, a new combination of wonder. The true function of a child's education should be the process of helping him to discover his uniqueness, aiding him toward its development, and teaching him how to share it with others. To love oneself is to struggle to rediscover and maintain your uniqueness. It is understanding and appreciating the idea that you will be the only you to ever live upon this earth, that when you die, so will all your fantastic possibilities. It is the realization that even you are not totally aware of the wonders which lie dormant within yourself. What may be is always potential for discovery. It's never too late. This knowledge should give man his greatest challenge, the pursuit of self, his own personal odyssey, discovering his rooms and putting them in order. It should challenge him not only to be a good person, a loving person, a feeling person, an intelligent person, but the best, most loving, feeling, intelligent person he is capable of. His search is not in competition with anyone else's. He becomes his own personal challenge. So loving yourself involves the discovery of the true wonder of you, not only the present you, but the many possibilities of you. It involves the continual realization that you are unique, like no other person in the world, that life is or should be the discovery, the development, and the sharing of this uniqueness. The process is not always easy, for one is bound to find those who will feel threatened by a changing, growing you. But it will always be exciting, always be fresh, and like all things new and changing, never dull. The trip into oneself is the grandest, most enjoyable, and longest lasting. The fare is cheap. It merely involves continual experiencing, evaluating, educating, trying out of new behavior. Only you can be the final judge in determining what is right for you.
I once attended a meeting that was designed to resolve some work conflicts between management and staff at a department at Merrill Lynch headquarters. The employees were asked to jot down some key words on a flip chart. One participant complained about a manager's tendency to overmanage and interfere and wrote the word nitpicking. The manager leapt to his feet and asked, "Shouldn't there be a hyphen between nit and picking?" He was very put out when everybody started laughing. Rabbi Rebecca Goldman Mag is our next reader. Rabbi Rebecca joined the Farmington Valley Jewish congregation, Emek Shalom, in July of 2016. She was ordained by Boston's Hebrew College in May of 2016, where she obtained her master's degree in Jewish education. She grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana. and earned a bachelor's degree in philosophy and religion from Louisiana State University, where she started a Hillel chapter. While in rabbinical school, Rabbi Becca served congregations and colleges in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. She's married to Saul Magg, a Connecticut native. They have 2 children, Isabella Faith and Grayson Vaughn. She enjoys cooking, reading children's books, watching Disney movies, and travel. Rebecca.
Hey, y'all, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. A little closer, is that better? Okay. How's that? Great. So I chose a book called The Dot for a few reasons. One is because we were all kids once, right? So this particular book, it reminds me that we all need someone to inspire us. So when I was in 5th grade, so I've always wanted to be a singer. And when I was in 5th grade, I tried out for this honor choir in our school. No big deal, right? I get up there in front of the teacher and I sing my heart out and she says, "I'm sorry, Becca, your voice just isn't what the world is looking for today." Right? That's the saddest thing, right? And a 5th grade teacher should never tell a child that, but I carried that with me until I got to college. And again, I decided I wanted to go into music, so I enrolled in a vocal performance program, and I landed the solo spot at our final performance that year. And so all year long, I spent the year practicing and singing and, working with my coach. And at the end of the year, when I got up to sing the solo piece in that performance, as I stood in front of the crowd of people waiting to hear me sing, I remembered what she had said, and I passed out right there on stage. And immediately went and changed my major to something else and whatever. The point is that, right, we all need someone to inspire us, right? And as I hear my daughter, who's sitting right back there playing and probably is not listening to a single thing that I'm saying, as I hear her sing, right, sing the song that's going through her mind, right, whether it's out of key or on key or out of tune or whatever, right, she is so brave and singing so loudly. And all I want in this world, right, is for I'm going to inspire her, obviously, but I want someone else, right? I want someone else to inspire her as she encounters them along the way. As she says, I want to do whatever, I want them to say like, yes, you can do it. And so when I read this book called The Dot, it's a children's book, obviously, because all I do is read kids' books. It inspired me and I wanted to share it with y'all. So it's very short. It doesn't hurt that the character's name is Vashti, which is a very important character in Judaism. Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. Her teacher leaned over the blank page and said, "A polar bear in a snowstorm." "Very funny," Vashti said. "I just can't draw." Her teacher smiled. "Well, why don't you just make a mark and see where it takes you?" So Vashti grabbed a marker and gave the paper a good, strong jab. "There," she said. Her teacher picked up the paper and examined it carefully. She said. And she pushed the paper toward Vashti and said, "Now sign it." Vashti thought for a moment, well, maybe I can't draw, but I can certainly sign my name. So she went ahead and she signed in big, bold letters at the bottom. That next week, when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was her little dot. It was framed in this big, beautiful gold frame. She took a look at it and she thought, I can make a better dot than that. So she opened up her never before used set of watercolors and she got to work. She painted and painted and painted a red dot, a purple dot, a yellow dot, a blue dot. She mixed the yellow and the blue and discovered that she could make green. She kept experimenting, lots of little dots in lots of many colors. If I can make little dots, then I can make big dots too, she thought. So she splashed her colors with bigger brushes on bigger papers to make bigger dots. At the school art show, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash, and you can see, if you can see, everybody's looking at her little dots, big dots, absence of dots. Vashti noticed that there was a little boy who was gazing up at her. "You're a really great artist," he said. "I wish I could draw just like you." "I bet you can," she said. "Me? No, not me. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler." So Vashti smiled. And she handed the little boy a blank sheet of paper, and she said, "Show me." The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at his little squiggle, and then she said, "Now sign it." Thank you.
Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson went on a camping trip. After a long hike, a good meal, and a bottle of wine, they were exhausted and went to sleep. Some hours later, Holmes awoke and nudged his faithful friend. "Watson, look up at the sky and tell me what you see." Watson replied, "I see millions and millions of stars." "What does that tell you?" Holmes asked. Watson pondered for a minute. "Astronomically, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets. Astrologically, I observe that Saturn is in Leo. Time-wise, I deduce that it is approximately 2:45. Theologically, I can see that the Lord is all-powerful and that we are all small and insignificant. Meteorologically, I suspect that we will have a clear, beautiful day tomorrow. What does it tell you, Holmes?" Holmes was silent for a minute, then said, "Watson, it tells me that somebody stole our tent." Speaking of outdoor stuff, Sally Rieger is the chair of the Farmington River Wild and Scenic Committee. As such, she's helped lead the charge to protect the Farmington River, seeking special protection for it from the federal government, and more recently, standing up to the proposals to divert this important resource. Sally.
Hello, I hope this is loud enough. This book that I'm going to read from is called The Control of Nature. And you can tell by the title, it's about the effort of people to manage some powerful forces, geologic forces and the force of water. So one section of this book is about a volcano. One section of the book is about the Mississippi River. And the last section of the book from which I'll read is called Los Angeles Against the Mountains. It's a book that you can learn a lot of geology from, and you can learn some geography about the Mississippi and the efforts to keep the water restrained within the boundaries that people want it in, although it breaks the levees, and sometimes people break the levees too, so it'll flood not on them, but somewhere else. And those forces are something we deal with. But it's not just about those forces. There are people in this story. And it's not just society, but there are individuals in the book. And it's based on fact. And because there are individuals and their lives are impacted by these things, there's drama and there's suspense and there is loyalty and a lot of work and ongoing effort and hope that you can manage something in the face of forces that you can't always manage. I like it because Somehow to me, which is sort of an odd thing, and you can think it's odd, it's okay with me if you think it's odd, is that I find it comforting that there are forces like that we can't quite push around and make them follow our will. We need to understand them, and if we understand them, we have some ways of either keeping out of their way or maybe managing them in a way so that we can live safely with them. But it's a really good lesson in humility. It's a really good lesson in what a tiny part we really play in the huge scale of things, if you think of time in a geologic sense. And I find that kind of comforting, because when I mess something up and I don't do it quite right, it's time to move on, because you do the best you can, you try to accomplish what you can, you try to be kind to people, you try to do the right thing. You don't always do it, you don't always do it, but then, you're just a little teeny piece of the whole story, so you don't have to worry too much. So this is Los Angeles against the mountains. In Los Angeles versus the San Gabriel Mountains, it is not always clear which side is losing. For example, the Genophiles, Bob and Jackie, can claim to have lost and won. They live on an acre of ground so high that they look across their yard and past the trunks of big pines at an aerial view over Glendale and Los Angeles to the Pacific Bays. The setting in cool, dry air is serene and Mediterranean. It has not been everlastingly serene. On a February night some years ago, the Genophiles were awakened by a crash of thunder, lightning striking the mountain front. Ordinarily, in their quiet neighborhood, only the creek beside them was likely to make much sound, dropping steeply out of Shields Canyon on its way to the Los Angeles River. The creek, like every component of all the river systems across the city, from mountains to ocean, had not been left to nature. Its banks were concrete. Its bed was concrete. When the boulders were running there, they sounded like a rolling freight. On a night like this, the boulders should have been running. The creek should have been a torrent. Its unnatural sound was unnaturally silent. There was, and there had been, a lot of rain. The Genophiles had 2 teenage children whose rooms were on the uphill side of the one-story house. The window in Scott's room looked straight up Pinecone Road, a cul-de-sac, which with hundreds like it defined the northern limit of the city, the confrontation of the urban and the wild. Los Angeles is overmatched on one side by the Pacific Ocean and on the other by very high mountains. With respect to these principal boundaries, Los Angeles is done sprawling. The San Gabriels, in their state of tectonic youth, are rising as rapidly as any range on Earth. Their loose, inimical slopes flout the tolerance of the angle of repose. Rising straight up out of the megalopolis, they stand 10,000 feet above the nearby sea, and they are not kidding with this city. Shedding, spalling, self-destructing, they are disintegrating at a rate that is among the fastest in the world. The phalanx communities of Los Angeles have pushed themselves hard against these mountains, an aggression that requires a deep defense budget to contend with the results. Kimberly Genophile called to her mother, who joined her in Scott's room as they looked up the street. From its high turnaround on Pinecone Road, the road plunges downhill like a ski run, bending left and then right, and then left and then right in steep Christiana turns for half a mile above the 300-foot straightaway that aims directly at the Genophiles' house. Not far below the turnaround, Shields Creek passes under the street, and there is a kink in its concrete profile that had been plugged by a 6-foot boulder, hence the silence of the creek. The water was now spreading over the street. It descended in heavy sheets. As the young Genophiles and their mother glimpsed in all but total darkness, the scene was suddenly illuminated by a blue electrical flash. In the blue light, they saw a massive blackness moving. It was not a landslide, not a mudslide, not a rock avalanche, by any means was it a conventional flood. In Jackie's words, it was just one big black thing coming at us, rolling with a lot of water in front of it, pushing the water, this big black thing. It was just a big black hill coming toward us. In geology, it would be known as a debris flow. Debris flows amass in stream valleys and more or less resemble fresh concrete. They consist of water mixed with a great deal of solid material, most of which is above sand size. Some of it is Chevrolet size. Boulders bigger than cars ride long distances in debris flows. Boulders grouped like fish eggs pour downhill in debris flows. The dark material coming toward the genophiles was not only full of boulders, it was so full of automobiles, it was like bread dough with raisins. On its way down Pinecone Road, it plucked up cars from driveways and the street. When it crashed into the genophile's house, the shattering of safety glass made terrific explosive sounds. A door burst open. Mud and boulders poured into the hall. We're going to go, Jackie thought. Oh my God, what a hell of a way for the four of us to die together. So I will leave you there.
That's incentive to read the book.
That's what they said in fourth grade, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you want to find out what happened.
Yeah, if you want to find out what happened, get the book, most of which we have in our library. That's the 2019 Night of 1,000 Stars. Let's have a round of applause for all our stars. They were great. Now, none of this is organic, but we have some terrific treats there. So please have some dessert, some refreshments. And thank you all for coming. We'll see you next year.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.